What would you do if one morning you discovered that your own homeowners association, the very group meant to protect your neighborhood, had secretly listed your house for sale without your permission? This isn't a what if. It actually happened to me. And when the HOA tried to steal my home, I decided to fight back in a way they never saw coming. The beginning of trouble. I bought my home at the edge of Rosewood Pines with a sense of pride. It wasn't a mansion, not the kind of place you'd find on glossy real estate magazines, but it was mine. My sanctuary, a wooden cabin with wide porches surrounded by pine trees, the kind of house that smelled like fresh air and freedom. The HOA, of course, came with the neighborhood. At first, it seemed harmless enough. A few community rules, some dues for maintenance, and the occasional newsletter about block parties. I paid my fees, mowed my lawn, and never made much noise. I wasn't looking for trouble, but trouble found me anyway. It started small. Letters about violations, the color of my porch light, the way my trash bins weren't rolled back fast enough. Even the flowers I planted, tulips, they said, weren't in line with the approved aesthetic. I laughed it off in the beginning, thinking these were just bored neighbors flexing their power. But then came the day I saw a for sale sign staked into my yard. I had just returned from a weekend trip when I pulled into my driveway and froze. There it was, a bright white post with a red and blue sign. For sale. Contact your local realtor. My first reaction was confusion. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe someone made a mistake. But when I ripped the sign out of the ground, I noticed the fine print, my exact address, my lot number, and a realtor's phone number. I dialed immediately. "Hi," I said, trying to sound calm. "This is the homeowner at address. Why is my house listed for sale?" The realtor on the other end paused before answering. "Oh, the HOA contacted us. They said you were behind on dues and the property was being prepared for sale." I nearly dropped the phone. Behind on dues? That was a lie. I had receipts of every payment made on time, every single month. My voice cracked as I said, "That's impossible. I own this home outright. I'm not behind on anything." The realtor sighed. "Look, I just go by the paperwork they send me. If there's been a mistake, you'll have to take it up with them." That's when I realized this wasn't a prank. This was an attack. The next morning, I marched to the HOA office. Their building sat smugly at the entrance of the neighborhood. A little brick box with frosted windows that looked more like a law firm than a community help center. Inside, I was met by a receptionist with a frozen smile. "I need to speak with the president now." Minutes later, Mr. Whitaker, the HOA president, appeared. A tall man in a pressed suit, his silver hair combed back, his expression calm but sharp, like a predator used to staying in control. "What seems to be the issue?" he asked smoothly. "You know what the issue is. Why is my house listed for sale without my permission?" He tilted his head, pretending to be confused. "Ah, yes, your property. According to our records, you've accumulated, let's see." He opened the file folder, $4,326 in unpaid dues and fines. I nearly laughed in disbelief. "That's a lie! I pay everything on time. I have proof." He closed the folder slowly. "Be that as it may, the board has already initiated steps to recover the property. If you'd like to dispute it, you're welcome to attend the next board hearing." His calmness wasn't normal. It wasn't the tone of someone who made a clerical error. It was the confidence of someone who planned this. I leaned forward. "You're not selling my home. Not now, not ever." For the first time, his smile faltered just slightly, but then he regained composure and said, "We'll see." That night, paranoia sunk in. I imagined strangers driving by, believing my house was already on the market. I pictured realtors leading people through my living room, judging my furniture. The thought was unbearable, so I took action. I installed a heavy-duty chain on the front gate, padlocked it shut, and nailed a massive wooden sign to the fence. "Private property, not for sale. Trespassers will be prosecuted." It wasn't just a sign. It was a declaration. This was my house, and I wasn't going down without a fight. The very next morning, my phone buzzed. An unfamiliar number. "This is Officer Daniels with the local police department. We've received a complaint from your HOA. They say you're obstructing their access to the property." Obstructing? My voice shook with anger. "Officer, with all due respect, this is my property. The HOA doesn't own my home. There was silence on the line before he replied, "Sir, I suggest you get your paperwork in order because it looks like they're planning to escalate this." That night, I pulled out every receipt, every bank statement, every letter from the HOA. Hours went by as I organized them into a thick binder, and that's when I found it. A letter dated 6 months earlier. A revised fee schedule hidden in fine print where they had suddenly added special assessments without my consent. They weren't just charging me regular dues, they had invented new fees out of thin air, then claimed I hadn't paid them. It was fraud. Plain and simple. I called my neighbor Jenny, who lived 3 houses down and had always been friendly. "Jenny, have you noticed anything weird with the HOA fees lately?" There was a pause. Then she whispered, "Oh my God, you too?" She explained that her brother's house 2 streets over had also mysteriously appeared on a realtor's listing. They were told he owed money, but he had been up to date. He sold and moved out under pressure, never realizing he'd been scammed. That was the moment the bigger picture clicked. This wasn't about me. This was a scheme. The HOA was targeting homeowners, fabricating debts, and forcing sales. And I was next on their list. Instead of cowering, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let them push me out. I was going to turn the tables. First, I documented everything. Pictures of the for sale sign, screenshots of the realtor's listing, recordings of my conversations, and copies of every letter. Then I started calling lawyers. Most hung up when they heard HOA dispute. Too messy, too small, not worth the time. But finally, I found one. A sharp attorney named Claire Peterson. After hearing my story, she said, "You don't just have a case. You may have grounds for a lawsuit that could dismantle their entire operation." My heart raced. For the first time, I felt hope. Claire told me to hold my ground, not to cave, and to let her handle communications with the HOA moving forward. She also gave me one final piece of advice. Don't underestimate them. If they've been pulling this off for years, they won't give up easily. One evening, I came home to find an orange paper slapped on my front door. Notice of eviction. Vacate in 7 days. My chest tightened. At first glance, it looked like an official court document. Panic set in. But when I sent it to my attorney, Claire, she didn't even hesitate. "This is forged, completely illegal." That's when it hit me. My HOA wasn't just playing dirty. They were desperate, willing to cross every legal line to scare me into giving up. I began reaching out to more neighbors, hoping someone would stand with me. Most stayed silent, shaking their heads. "We don't want trouble," they muttered. Then I met George, a retired veteran. His voice was heavy with regret. They did the same thing to me. Fake fees, endless fines. I couldn't fight back. I sold my home for half its value. The realization hit me like a brick. This wasn't about me alone. This was a system-wide scam. A machine designed to squeeze homeowners dry until they broke. Claire urged me to confront them publicly. So at the next HOA meeting, I stood before the board with a stack of receipts. I've paid every single due on time. This so-called for sale notice is a lie. Stop this fraud now. Whitaker, the smug president of the board, smirked. "These receipts only dues. You've conveniently ignored the special assessments." I shot back. "Special assessments are only legal if homeowners vote on them. You never held a vote." The entire hall went silent. For the first time, neighbors glanced at each other, doubt spreading across their faces. Whitaker banged his gavel and sneered. "Meeting adjourned." I shouted across the room, "Then I'll see you in court." The courtroom was tense. On one side, Whitaker and his expensive lawyers. On mine, Claire, calm and collected, armed with evidence. She presented my payment records, the fake eviction notice, and a voice recording of the realtor admitting the sale attempt. The judge leaned forward. "Mr. Whitaker, how were these special fees enacted without a homeowner's vote?" Whitaker's face turned pale. His lawyer fumbled, but no documents, no proof, nothing. Then came the final blow. An ex-board secretary testified. "They asked me to falsify records. I refused and resigned." The courtroom gasped. The scam was undeniable. The judge's ruling was swift and sharp. The attempted sale of my home, fraudulent. The so-called fees, invalid. HOA financials, placed under investigation. Whitaker and his board, removed from power. The verdict sent shockwaves through the neighborhood. For the first time, people felt safe enough to speak out. A week later, neighbors approached me. "You should run for the board. We need someone who won't exploit us." At first, I resisted. I just wanted peace. But then it sunk in. If people like me didn't step up, Whitaker's kind would crawl right back in. So I accepted. And for the first time, the HOA started serving the community instead of draining it. Today, when I look at the private property sign on my gate, I don't just see boundaries. I see victory. The HOA nearly stole my home. If I hadn't fought back, I would have become just another victim, another George. But I took control. I turned their scam against them, and that was my greatest win.